Okay, everyone, back again. We are with the Holy Torah Moshe Alshech, and today we're continuing the discussion of the story of the Jewish people leaving Egypt and Pharaoh's pursuit after them, and the fact that the Jewish people took a roundabout journey, etc. So the pasuk says, this is the third pasuk in the Parshat, Vayikach Moshe. Parshat Beshalach, Vayikach Moshe et atzmot Yosef imo. He took the bones of Joseph. So it says Moshe as follows: V'hine adayin haya makom lomar. So last time we saw that it was only the Erev Rav that we were afraid that didn't have emunah. Really, the Jewish people would never be afraid of falling in battle because they have Hashem. And as long as they know that Hashem is with them, that Hashem is behind this, all of these things, then they're calm, they're confident, and they're ready to take on any challenge. Says Moshe, but still, even if it's all Hashem, they're still worried that maybe this is the wrong thing to do. Why might it be the wrong thing to do? They might reconsider going back. When they see war. Why? Not because they're scared of the weapons of the enemy, but rather they'll take it as a message from Hashem. Ki yomru v'yesh Hashem itanu. If Hashem is with us, v'lama matzadtanu milchama. Why are we being faced with war if the Lord is with us? V'yomru b'libam. This will cause them to consider, ulay adayin lo nishlam hazman. Maybe the time for the Exodus hasn't come yet. Maybe the same fate of the Ephraimites who left early will happen to us. So that then they'll be afraid that what they're doing isn't the will of the Lord. Who says that this rationale of counting the 400 years starts from Yitzchak's birth? That sounds a bit, what should we say? It's not the Parshat, it's not the Pshat in the words of the Hashem to Avraham. So suddenly they'll start getting cold feet and they'll start thinking maybe we're taking the exile before the time. Maybe we're leaving the exile before the time, which is why we're going to be punished. And therefore, Moshe took the bones of Yosef. For who? Why did he take the bones of Yosef? What does this have to do with the fact that the Jewish people won't be afraid of war? Because essentially what they would say is, if they are starting to believe that the time hasn't yet come to leave, then they're basically going to start thinking that Moshe is an imposter. He's a fake Messiah. He's taking them out before the time. But because Moshe had the bones of Yosef, we don't think that the Jews are going to think that. The bones of Yosef are the strongest proof that the time has come and that Moshe is the actual Redeemer. Why? Ki al ken itchakem Moshe vayikach Moshe et atzmot Yosef imo. He took the bones leraya uleed, as a proof and as a testimony. Ki hu hagoel amiti, that he is indeed the true Redeemer and Messiah. V'hu v'meh ki yishbiya b'nei Yisrael. So now we're going to see how this is a proof that the time has come. V'hu ki yinei Yosef b'tzavato techav. When Joseph took an oath, made his brothers take an oath to promising him to take them out. What does it say? It says, "Vayashba Yosef et bnei Yisrael limor." Joseph swore his brothers to say the following: "Pakod yifkod etchem v'alitem." So, what was really the content of Joseph's oath that he made them swear? Two things, says Moshe. Says Moshe, two things. What was the oath? The first oath was that he gave them over the oath that the Jewish people had, the tradition that the Jewish people had, which was that the Redeemer, that's going to be the real Redeemer, is going to take them out with the code Pakod Yifkod. Ki Kabbalah ita b'yad Yisrael Yaakov. The Jewish people had this tradition from Jacob. Ki hagoel sheyomar pkida kfula hu hagoel amiti. If we have a Redeemer that announces the redemption by using this double-barreled Pakod Yifkod, that is the real Redeemer. V'zeh ki en tzafek ki masoret b'Yaakov Lo tiyeh lanu kiyam al yedei Yosef. If this tradition came from Yaakov, who gave it over? Yosef, because Yosef was Yaakov's main student, his main continuer of the tradition. So this tradition actually happened now at this oath of the bones. What did Yosef make the people, make his brothers swear as an oath? Shnei dvarim. Lemor pakod yifkod. First of all, tell your children. Lemor means to tell over to others. What should they tell over? Tell to your children, and your children should tell their children. This is a tradition. That what? That pakod yifkod. That there's going to be a redeemer that's going to come with this double-barreled expression of remembrance and redemption, and he's going to be the real redeemer. Unless nobody says it, then they're not the redeemer. That's the oath number one. And oath number two, the second oath was that they should take his bones up to Eretz Yisrael. So now Moshe will give us a very beautiful understanding of what really is the meaning, the deeper understanding of this pakod yifkod. What does that even mean? Why is this a double redemption? And why is this the code? And really, deep down, this comes back to the question of how do we know? And Moshe doesn't mention this, but this is a question that always bothered me, and the Mefarshim mention it on different levels. How could we know if this was a tradition in all the Jewish peoples? Every Jewish kid knew, as part of his tradition that he was taught, that the Redeemer is going to say pakod yifkod. Then any imposter can just say the word pakod yifkod, and he's got the people running after him. So this pakod yifkod has got to be more than just these words. It's got to be more than just an empty phrase. So now Rav Moshe is going to take us to a little bit behind the scenes meaning of what pakod yifkod really means. So he says as follows: the achshava, and I think this is a pshat, says Rav Moshe. Shehu ma'amarenu al pasuk va'otzeti et tzivutai et ami b'nei Yisrael. Hashem says, I'm going to take out my hosts, my nation, the Jewish people. Says Rav Moshe, what does it mean, my hosts? What's tzivutai? So the pshat means the Jewish people, the hosts of the Jewish people, the many hundreds of thousands of Jews. But says Rav Moshe, the deeper meaning of that is Hinei mashkon yesh Yisrael she'otzia ma'galut. You see, he was telling the Jewish people, you should know that you're for sure going to leave Egypt. Why? Ki alo pamalya shel ma'ala hem begalut im Israel. When the Jews are in exile, the entire heavenly pamalya, the heavenly family, the familia shel ma'ala is also in exile. So we're talking about the heavens and all the angels are with the Shekhinah in Galut. As we know that Am Yisrael are in Galut, the Shekhinah comes to Galut with us. So therefore, V'ani lo anichem, the heavenly angels and the Shekhinah will definitely not remain in Galut. Umi sheyotzi otam, yotzi et Yisrael. So the Jewish people had a guarantee that because Hashem is always going to make sure that the Malachim and the Shekhinah will leave Mitzrayim, so once they're leaving, then the Jewish people can leave as well. And obviously, even though the Jewish people are human, and the Jewish people can sin and fall into the Egyptian culture and the Egyptian idols, and therefore be unworthy of leaving, as the situation was, but because Hashem tied the state of the Shekhinah and the heavenly chariots and the Pamalya Shalmala to the Jewish people, that was their guarantee, because they tethered them, Hashem tethered them with the Shekhinah, that they're definitely going to leave. Because that's Hashem's not going to, meaning Hashem was saying that when the Jews are in Galut, I'm in Galut. And I can't stay in Galut because the story Hashem is always going to be good. So eventually the Jewish people's story is also going to end good. I'm going to take out who? My hosts, my angels. The Agaban, and by the way, they'll also come along. This is the deeper meaning. When Yosef says, Pakod yifkod, remember, he will remember. What does that mean? Pakod et ha'elyonim, yifkod et tachtanim. Hashem will surely remember the heavenly angels and Shekhinah Akdosha, and therefore yifkod tachtanim. He'll also remember the Jewish people along with that. But now that's what explained to us, once we understand that the redemption of the Jewish people is dependent on the redemption of the Shekhinah. Now we understand how Moshe taking the bones of Yosef is a proof that the time has indeed come. What is the proof? How is this a proof backing up Moshe's claim that he's an actual real redeemer? Because now Moshe is answering why it says double term for the oath that Yosef made, because Yosef actually made 2 oaths. What was the first oath? Pakod Yifkod. That what? That Hashem is going to take the Jews out along with the Shekhinah, and that's going to be your coat, that's going to be your guarantee that you're going to leave. But it's also going to be the sign that nobody can claim that the time has come. If the Shekhinah is not leaving, then you're not leaving. It goes both ways. So if some fake Messiah comes and says, oh, we're leaving now, but you can see that the Shekhinah is still in Galut, that's a sign that you're not really left, that the Galut hasn't ended. But then when Moshe came, he said, Ko Amar Hashem. This is what Hashem said, Pakod Pakadati. I double remembered, which means I remembered the Shekhinah and I remembered the Jews. And therefore, Vahalitem, Yosef said, then you can take my bones. You can only take my bones when this double Shekhinah redemption happens. If the Jews will be skeptical regarding the authenticity of Moshe's mission to take them out. Imamitihu. Whether it's the actual time to leave or not, im ayin or not, Yosef sheimo. All they have to do is see that Yosef's coffin is with Moshe, and that itself is the clearest sign possible that the time has come. V'yadu ala emet, and they'll agree and acknowledge Moshe's redemption mission. The Gamam was saying, where do we see this even more? Ki bevakesh Moshe taronosh Yosef. Moshe, when he tried to find the coffin of Yosef, he couldn't find it. He was looking around everywhere, and it was hidden. Says the Midrash, Amralo Serach bat Asher, Serach the son of Asher, who was still alive, said, Ki haya bekarbanit shel malachim. He was buried in the pyramids with all the kings, with all the pharaohs. V'halach umatza aronot rabim. He went into the burial tomb, and he found a bunch of different coffins. He didn't know which one was Joseph's. V'lo yadat Yosef. As Amar, what did he say? He said, Yosef, Yosef. What were the words he said? Hinei hashchina. The Shechina, Knesset Israel, the entirety of the Jewish people's collective soul. Upamal Yashomala, and the heavenly family. V'Yisrael, and the Jewish people, Yotzim, are leaving now. Lama ki higia et geula, the time of redemption has happened. Im titgale mutav, if you're going to reveal yourself to us, then we're happy to take you. V'im lav, if we don't know where you are, p'turin anu me'ashvua, we're going to be exempted from the oath. Miyad nizdaze arono, Yosef's coffin shook, vibrated, v'natalo, he knew it was his and he took it. So now, says Rav Moshe, the fact that Yosef was hidden until the time came, this is an actual proof that that the time has come. And what was really what Moshe said to Yosef? He told him the Shekhinah is leaving, Pamal Yashamala is leaving, and the Jews are leaving, which in other words he was saying Pakod Yifkod to Yosef. He was telling Yosef that this Pakod Yifkod you spoke about is happening now. And that was the time when he said this is happening, Yosef revealed himself. If not, that this was actually the time of this double remembrance, he wouldn't reveal himself. Joseph is already in heaven and he knows the truth. So the fact that Joseph revealed himself is a proof that this double-barreled remembrance is happening, and the Shekhinah has left, and Moshe isn't here to take us out. Umagam says Moshe, this is even more backed up by the Zohar. What does the Zohar say? Zohar says, Yosef haya merkava le Shekhinah b'Mitzrayim. Yosef was, at least after Yaakov died, or even before Yaakov came, Yosef was the chariot of the Shekhinah. That as long as the Shekhinah was in Mitzrayim, Yosef had to be there to be the tzaddik that was present in order to allow the Shekhinah to be there with the Jewish people, because the Shekhinah always needed to rest on the tzaddik's soul. So even when Joseph died, his kever, his coffin in Mitzrayim, was a resting place for the Shekhinah, as we know that Yosef is the Midat of Yisod, which is the connection to the Shekhinah. And if the Shekhinah would still remain in Mitzrayim, Yosef wouldn't be able to leave. Because Yosef has to stay in Mitzrayim as long as the Shekhinah is there. So the fact that Yosef is coming out is the biggest proof that the Shekhinah is coming out, which is the biggest proof that the Jews' time to come out as well. נמצא כי בזאת שהמציא עצמו ראיה למשה שגאולה אמיתית, וזה ויקח משה את עצמות יוסף עמו. לראיה, Moshe took the bones of Yosef. Why did he take the bones? To prove that it's the time to go. Ve'ech yaraya. How is Yosef's bones being with Moshe a proof that the time has come? Ki Yosef anizkar hashbea ishbea, because Yosef made the double oath. Number one, sheyamru pakod yifkod, which means that Moshe using this word pakod yifkod is the real redemption, real redeemer, hu hagoel amiti. Number two, the second oath that Yosef made, ki hashbea shvua shniya. Yosef also made a second oath, v'hi ki be'et hahi shehi et shtei apkidah, the time where there's going to be the double remembrance, the double redemption, shel tzva shel ma'ala, of the holy angels in heaven. V'shal Yisrael, az v'alitem, now only then am I going to allow you to take me up. V'hinei atahu nitra'eh, uba, Yosef revealed himself to Moshe to be able to take him. Hu yoreh, this is the clearest sign, ki yigia et hagula be'emet, the time has come. Shem lo kan hayam nitra'eh, Yosef would not reveal himself otherwise. V'hu shamela, shu shamash amru chazal, this is a beautiful diuk, as we mentioned before, that Moshe, in order to get Yosef to reveal himself to him in the pyramids, in the burial spot of the Egyptian pharaohs, he actually used the phrase, he used the statement of the Shekhinah and the Pamale Shamala are leaving, and that's what got Yosef to vibrate and reveal himself to be taken out. So this is really coming back to the question. Moshe doesn't really finish off the point, but this is what Moshe was saying before. How does this fit in here? Because we need to explain why. How do we know that the Jewish people were ready to face any challenge? Any war wasn't going to make them want to turn back and back out of the whole thing. Only the Erev Rav. So he says why? Because the Jewish people had emunah. But he says even if you have emunah, afuch, if you have emunah, that will make you believe that if this is Hashem's plan, then nothing should go wrong. If something's going wrong, that must be it's not Hashem's plan. And they even have precedent to that. They have precedent to that with the Ephraim people that left 30 years earlier when it wasn't the time, and they went through the Pelishtim and they got killed. So that could have been a very strong deterrent. Whenever they see any hint of war, that will be like, oh, okay, war shouldn't happen to those who are doing Hashem's will. So, and we're not 100% sure it's Hashem's will to begin with, then maybe let's go back to Mitzrayim, because that's what Hashem wants from us to do. They were going to be like the TORAH Karta of like, it's not the time to leave, we have to go back to, we have to leave the state. So that's why the fact that Moshe had the bones was the clearest proof that it is the time, and therefore the Jews would not have backed out of the war. It was only the Erev Rav, and they're the ones that caused all of the problems. Okay, so now we're continuing the next pasuk in the Parshat. Vayis'u Sukkot. They journeyed from Sukkot, which was the first stop out of Egypt. Vayachnu be'etam. And they landed, they rested in Etam. Where's Etam? B'ktsei Amidbar, which is the edge of the desert. Says Rav Moshe, we need to understand, why do I need to know where Etam is? We know where Etam is, or we don't know where Etam is. Either way, it doesn't make a difference. What's the significance of Etam being at the edge of the desert? Number two, another thing that's mentioned here, says Rav Moshe, in this rhetoric of the Jewish people leaving the desert and heading back, and the whole lead up to Pharaoh's pursuit, is the mention of the fact that they had the clouds of glory. Now, why didn't we mention that also last week's parasha? there seems to be certain details that are not important to the actual story of the Exodus. The fact that that Moshe took the bones, or the fact that the Jews had weapons, or the fact that 80% of the Jews died in Choshech, or the fact now that they had clouds of glory. So all of these things seem to be left out in the main story of the Exodus, and they're now being reintroduced or introduced at a later date, as a later stage in the story, and they seem to have significance specifically to this part of the story. So why is that so? Number 3, the pasuk says that they had a cloud, a cloud pillar during the day, and that they had a pillar of fire during the night. And the pasuk finishes off, they had the fire pillar during the night, lalechet yomam v'alayla, to go day and night. But this is interesting, because why they didn't have the fire pillar to go during the day? During the day they didn't need the fire pillar, so the fire pillar was to go at night. V'lama mazkir midat yom balayla, it should say, there was a amud esh, a pillar of fire, lalechet balayla, to enable them to walk during the night too. The yomam v'alayla isn't really to do anything with the fire. Ve'im amro yomam chozer al amud hanizkar. So you want to tell me that when the pasuk finishes off, so that they should go during the day and during the night, it's not referring to only the fire pillar. It's also referring to the cloud pillar. So the cloud pillar is for the day and the fire pillar is during the night. But says Moshe, Harei nemar bo holech lefneim yomam b'amud hanan. It already says that the cloud pillar is for the daytime. So we see there's some kind of dayness mentioned at the fire pillar. Number 4, we have to understand, Gam amro lo yamish amud hanan. Lo lama hodia zeh. So the rabbis explain that lo yamish means that the fire pillar and the cloud pillar always they were there always. They made sure nobody was the Jews were left without any of them. So when they had the changing of the guards, they were both there at the same time, and then one would leave to make place for the other. But the question is, why does it only mention the fact that the cloud didn't leave until the fire pillar came, and not the other way around? It only mentions it one of the ways. V'gam masha amura batenu שלא היה נושא עמוד הענן מלפניהם עד אחרי היות עמוד האש לפניהם. איך נלמד זה מהפסוק? How is this clear in the pasuk? How does it say it here? It says Moshe as follows. אך למה שגזרה חוכמתו יתברך. So now we have an interesting situation here. The Jews have headed out to the desert, and they just reached the desert, on the outskirts of the desert in Etam, and suddenly they're turning back. Now, what's going on? Why are they turning back? So we have to understand that this was obviously a ruse to get Paro to start feeling like the Jews are confused, as we know. But we have to understand how that had an effect on the Jewish people as well, because they were told that they're going to leave, and now they're being told to go back. So this was a real test of character for anybody involved with this whole event. So it says Moshe as follows. So obviously the main point of turning back was Sheyomru ki Yisrael nevuchim. So it's in order to confuse Paro, to make him make the mistake of running after them. V'yizbu bayam, so they can drown in the sea. V'hinei chash pen yomar ish. One could claim the following: Ma betza bezeh. What's the benefit of the Jews going back one day journey? It can actually cause damage. What would be the problem? The Jews might think that Moshe isn't acting on the Lord's command, because really they didn't know if Moshe spoke to Hashem or not. All they saw was Moshe's commands. They don't know yet. They didn't yet know Moshe so well. So far they're just being carried around and they're getting to know this whole new system. And suddenly, as long as things make sense, they're with the plan. They're like, okay, we're leaving. Okay, I get that. I'm prepared to take this journey into the unknown. but let's go. And suddenly Moshe is like, no, we got to the edge of the desert. We're going to turn around now. What's going on? Why are they turning around? Says, what will be the reason that the Jews might think that Moshe is doing it on his own? Mi yirato, because Moshe is afraid. Moshe just had a good look at the desert, and what does he see there? Empty vastness. The only thing that's there are huge venomous snakes. And Moshe was like, this is not the plan. I didn't think this through. I thought we can escape through the desert. The desert's full of snakes. Let's go back. And the Jewish people will start thinking that Moshe doesn't have it together. He's confused. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's just got cold feet. They got to the edge of the desert, and Moshe is telling them to go back. Why? Because of the snakes. Because they're scared of the snakes. This is why he's telling them to go back. So he can now reconsider and recalculate his plans to find a different way out of Egypt. Or another thing they could think about. The reason Moshe is telling them to turn back is because they reach the desert during the night. And it's not good to start such a dangerous, perilous journey during the night time, as we know that the night time is a time of destructive forces. So Moshe is like, okay, let's back off for a minute. Let's stay away from the desert for now, and we'll get back here during the daytime. So mamtin ad odor boke or ad et boam esh. So it could be two things. It could be that Moshe will wait till the morning, because the pillar of fire isn't enough to head out into the desert with, or maybe the pillar of fire is good enough to head into the desert with, but it didn't yet arrive. They were waiting for the pillar of fire to arrive after the pillar of cloud of glory had left. So right now they had to hang in there until help arrives. So now we want to make sure that the Jewish people believe Moshe, because Moshe obviously told them that this is the plan. We're going back so that Paro should think that we're lost and he should start running after us. But they're like, okay, this sounds like outlandish plan. I don't know if you're making this up, if you're telling us this is what Hashem said. And they could start questioning Moshe. Va'adro atama emet, until they see that Paro actually chased them and Paro actually got killed and all the Egyptians got thrown into the sea. It will take them a couple of days of questioning Moshe, questioning the whole thing, and that wouldn't be good for them. So that's why Hashem wanted to straight away make sure that they don't have these thoughts, they don't have these sveikot in Moshe Rabbeinu's authenticity, that he's giving Hashem's orders. So what's going on here? So how do we understand the psukim? They rested in Eitam. Asher chanaya zu hayta al pi Hashem. They rested there because Hashem said. Why did Hashem tell them to go to the edge of the desert and then turn back? The sheiyeh makom lahatot Paro. It was in order to make Paro, to mislead him and make him think that they're lost, they're confused. That Paro should think that they're afraid of the desert. They turned back because of the fearsome, they were scared of the fearsome snakes. Now is our opportunity to strike. The Jews are scared. That means that God isn't with them. So now we can attack. Because now the Jews are helpless. They've left their divine protection. Okay, so you've got a nice bait. You're getting Paro to chase them. That's very good. But what's going to happen here is that the Jewish people are also going to be involved in this, and they're going to really, really freak out. And they're going to start questioning Moshe's authenticity. Now we're mentioning the story of the clouds of glory. Why is that so? How does the clouds of glory help the Jews not question Moshe? This is going to help the Jews not question Moshe's motives. How? To understand how this is going to help the Jews believe in Moshe. It says that the Jews had a pillar of cloud, lan chotam haderech. So the simple translation means to show them the way, to lead them on the way. But there, if that's true, it should have said lan chotam lachnotam baderech. It should have said that to lead them in the way. But what does it say? It says lan chotam haderech, to lead, to straighten the path. What does that mean? That means that when they reach the edge of the desert, and now they're turning back, which you could say the reason is because they're afraid of all of these crazy snakes in the desert. Lo me'eimat nachash saraf hanimtzaim bo yeshivu raglei misham. It's not because of the snakes that Moshe was scared of, that's why they're backing out and turning around. Why do I know for sure it's not because of that? Ki alo v'Hashem olech lifneim yomam. Hashem is heading in front of them, not only to show them the way to go, ki im la'arim michshol midarkam, to remove any obstacles on the way, leva'er nachash saraf v'akrav, to destroy any of the negative snakes, le'asher achotam, to smooth out the paths. Hashfala hakbeah, as the Midrash says, that the valleys were lifted, v'agavoy hashpil, the mountain dunes were flattened. So the Jews had to just go walk straight, and there was no dangerous predators. Right, as we know, there were 7 clouds, 6 from all directions, four directions up and down, and the 7th was the one that went in front of them. The Midrash says it flattened the hills and lifted the valleys, and it would kill and remove all of the snakes and scorpions. And it would literally roll out a red carpet, so to speak, of scorpion and snake blood in front of them, so that they don't have to face any of the dangers of the desert. So now, and this is what the Parshat means, lan chotam haderech, to flatten out, to the straight, the actual, to straighten out the derech. Actually, the cloud was making the derech. It was making it possible. It was creating a path through the desert that was sterile from all of the dangers of the desert. Even though Paro can be fooled and misled into thinking that the Jews are afraid of the elements of the desert, but the Jews themselves, they know that's not the reason. They know Moshe isn't scared of the desert. Why? Because they have the clouds, which is why Moshe explains, this is why we're mentioning the clouds of glory here, because it's explaining the methods that Hashem is using and how it's protecting the Jewish people but misleading Paro at the same time. Another reason we would say that Moshe is backing out of the desert is because he doesn't want to head in during the night time. You don't want to head into a dangerous zone during the night, because any journey shouldn't be taken during the night, as the Gemara mentions. But that's not true either. Why? Because besides the cloud of glory during the day, there's a pillar of fire in the night time. And what does the pillar of fire, the pillar of fire do? Be'amud esh laha'ir lahem. It lights up the entire camp. Kol kach be'etzem. It makes the night so bright. Lalechet yomam v'layla. It makes the night be shining like the daytime. Klomar halayla kayom mamash. It wasn't just a little spotlight far away somewhere. It was a real, massive floodlights just flooding the entire camp with light. Alken izkir po yomam lashvot lo alayla, to say that the night and the day were the same, almost like the cities we live in today. Shelo haya ka'am rav asher lifneihem panas. It's not like an entire huge population that have a small lantern in front of them trying to light it up. Because that won't help. Shelo ya'ir be'etzad. It won't actually make things light. Rak le'rishonim akrovim el hapanas. Only the few people in the front, very close to the lantern. Rak, and that wasn't that way. It was actually so light. Kolchim la'or hayom, was as if they were walking during the daytime. She'or kulam shaveh. The entire camp was lit up. La'ir lahem, that all of them had light. Lalechet halayla kayom. Shalkem maskir midat yom balayla. Komro yomam balayla. it caused the night to be like the day. Which is interesting actually, because we know that the desert is a place of all the negative forces, not only physically but also spiritually, which is why the Jewish people in the desert had to go through all of these different journeys, and they had to journey and camp and rest and journey and all the things that happened, all of the crazy downfalls and the tests that they went through, because they were actually dealing with very, very intense opposition forces to Hashem. And as we know, the Zohar calls the three negative klippas that are opposing Hashem's energy, Nachash, Saharaf, and Akrab, the three different types of venomous reptiles that hang out in the desert. So the Anane Kavod was actually the spiritual bubble as well as the physical bubble, creating a godly, fertile environment in the desert. It was almost like they were traveling with like a space rocket in outer space with all kinds of different oxygen masks spiritually, and also the fact that nighttime, which is also a time of darkness, was actually made into night. With night was like day. And that's another indication of the spiritual level of the Jews in the desert, that they had this ability to transform every type of darkness and negative force into holiness, which is really what the journey of the Jewish people in the desert was. So that's what Moshe is telling us here, is another reason why we know that Moshe isn't backing out of this journey out of fear of the night. And another reason why he didn't wait around for the pillar of fire to come, because the pillar of fire always comes straight away before the end of the day. Before the pillar of cloud of honor leaves, cloud of glory leaves, the pillar of fire would come. It doesn't come be that Moshe is waiting for it to come. But I'm doing a pasuk because it says, it says that the pillar of fire wouldn't leave from before the people, but it doesn't say that. It says, Lo yamush Amud Aman Yomam Lifnei Ha'am Amud Ha'esh Laila Lifnei Ha'am, that the pillar of cloud glory wouldn't leave until the Amud Ha'esh is Lifnei Ha'am. So now coming back to our story, Moshe didn't leave the desert because of fear of the nighttime, because it was light like the daytime. So obviously that's not the reason to be scared. So therefore, what was the only reason? The reason was for Paro to think that they're too scared to head out in the desert. They went back from the desert, an entire day's length of journeying, turning around. Yomar Paro ba'ad b'nei Yisrael, he said about the Jewish people, nevuchim em ba'aretz, they're confused. Why are they confused? The midbar is locked in front of them. They can't penetrate it. Why can't they penetrate it? The flaming snakes and scary venomous animals are standing against them in the desert. And therefore they can't enter it. So Paro was like, hey, they thought they can escape through the desert. Now they're realizing the desert isn't the place to go through. The desert is an uninhabitable place. And if it's uninhabitable, it's also impassable. And the Jews were scared. So the Paro says, okay, now let's chase them. Interestingly enough, the Malbim adds that, as we know, Rashi brings, that Baal Tzefon was the only Avodah Zarah that Hashem didn't destroy during the firstborn plague, and that was so the Mitzrayim can think that this Avodah Zarah is actually a powerful one, that the Jews God of the Hebrews can't overpower him. So Paro was actually thinking now as well that the Jews, where did they go back to camp? The pasuk says they went back where they camped in front of the sea by Migdal. Lifnei Baal Tzefon. They camped in front of this Baal Tzefon. So Hashem was telling the Jews to create this stage says, look like that Baal Tzefon actually pulled the Jews out of their journey, kind of hacked the Jew system, and made them unwillingly turn back, and now they're being held hostage by Baal Tzefon. And he was the one, Sagar Aleim Midbar, but meaning Baal Tzefon doesn't let them into the desert. So now Paro's thinking, hey, I forgot about Baal Tzefon. He was like a side of a Zara that we had in the desert. We didn't really focus on him. But now I'm realizing that he's actually a very strong God. He's even managing to overcome the God of the Hebrews. Yud Kei Vav Kei, he didn't even manage to destroy him at the firstborn plague like all the other gods. And now he's actually managing to bring the Jews back from the desert. And he's keeping them there for me to come and attack them. So Paro really took the opportunity in his head. This was actually a golden opportunity to realize that he was like, yeah, Hashem dropped them. So now Ramosh is going to explain why the Jewish people is obviously, that wasn't the case that Hashem left them behind, but why Paro did think so. So now he says as follows: V'hinei lu chachmu Paro v'avadav. If Paro and his servants were actually smart, they wouldn't try and chase the Jews in an aggressive manner, trying to kill them. They could have done a way better plan. They could have gone over to the Jews and lovingly and caringly said to them, look, you've got one option, which is the option of going through the desert now with all these snakes and scorpions. It's very dangerous. It's going to be very difficult. You've got no water and food. But I'm going to offer you a very secure haven back in Egypt. And it's going to be fine. We're not going to punish you for it. We're going to bring you back. And we're going to offer you nice smartphones and easy jobs. And you're just going to be a slave. It's fine. It's easy. It's comfortable. Right? And that could have been the emancipation version of destroying the Jews, of letting the Jews feel comfortable to come back into Egypt. But what did Hashem do? Hashem made the Egyptians not give them the nice pitch, as the only option they have rationally is to be back in Egypt, and they'll welcome them with open arms. What did Hashem do? Hashem actually v'chizakti et lev Paro. Hashem made Paro's heart heavy and hardened, b'chamat kocho, with anger. L'man yitzchazku Yisrael itametz bilti tet lev nashuv elav. So the Jewish people shouldn't even for 1 minute think that going back to Egypt is an option. So even though we see that some of the people were telling Moshe, why do we leave Egypt? I would love to be back in Egypt. But they knew obviously that's not an option now. They just were angry at Moshe for taking away that option. They were like, we were very comfortable there, and now you've made us be a Paro. We're an enemy of the state now. Now we don't have a state to go back to. We're a stateless people. We're now stuck in front of a sea. What do? And this is where the Jews really had to access their emunah in order to break free and bring forth the miracle. So now we're going to skip the 16 questions of the next piece because we have only a few minutes left, and we're going to get straight onto what Rav Moshe tells us here. So Amar and Ki V'rati Yisrael Shavim Alachem Echad. Paro said the reason the Jews left, the reason the Jews are returning back to Egypt is because of the scary snakes, which is why they're afraid, they're running away. Vayugad lemelech Mitzrayim. It was told to the king of Egypt, Ki barach ha'am, that the Jews escaped. What does it mean that the Jews escaped? It doesn't mean that they escaped Egypt, because originally they left Egypt with Paro's consent. But barach ha'am, says Rav Moshe, means they escaped the desert because they were scared. They were scared of all the elements there. And then vayehafach levav Paro. Paro said as follows: why did Hashem punish me with all the 10 plagues? I've got two ways of understanding it. Either because I didn't acknowledge Hashem's power. I said, Lo yadati yud kei vav kei. I don't acknowledge yud kei vav kei. Or because I actually held the Jews hostage. So what did Hashem do? Hashem constantly sent messages, let my people go. Shalach et ami, let my people. So Hashem was basically saying that the only thing I care about, I don't care about you acknowledging me, not acknowledging me. That doesn't really make a difference to me. What I care about, Hashem says, is my people. So Paro said, okay, I'll let your people go. But the second, says Paro, as Moshe explains, he saw that the Jewish people were taken out of Egypt and that Hashem just abandoned them. So Paro said, no, listen, hey, what just happened? Hashem wanted to punish me because I disrespected him, but he didn't have the guts to say that he was punishing me because of that, because he was too proud to admit that I offended him. So he made as if the plagues were coming to take the Jews out of Egypt, but now once he's given me those plagues, he took the Jews out and just abandoned them to their fate in the desert. So suddenly he realized that, hey, I don't have to actually care about the Jews. I can go and kill the Jews, because Hashem doesn't care about them either. I just need to figure out with Hashem. We'll figure out with that. I'll apologize. So suddenly, the fact that he felt that the Jews were abandoned by Hashem gave him his power or his perceived mistake that he can now run after the Jews because Hashem isn't really with them. And obviously that was his mistake because Hashem was always with us. May we merit to have Hashem with us all the time. Thank you, Hashem.
Oh, yeah.